The greatest adventure is what lies ahead. Today and tomorrow are yet to be said.
Hello everyone, this is No One of Consequence, and first thanks for clicking on this video. This is the second episode in a planned series in which I will be recounting my ongoing Dungeons & Dragons campaign. If you haven't yet, you should go back and watch the first video before you continue on with this one so that you'll understand what's going on here. First, spoiler alert, in this video I'm going to be talking about these adventure modules, so just be aware that details will be revealed that you might want to not know about if you ever plan on playing through these modules. So I realized after I made the first video that I had kind of gotten ahead of myself and I left a few details out that I should have covered then. So I'm going to go back and do that now. First of all, you'll recall from the first video, one of the very first adventures was this module here, the disappearance of Harold the Head Mage. And a good part of the adventures in that first video were the characters trying to find out what happened to him. When they finally got back to the village, they learned that Harold was not actually missing at all. He had simply left his cottage and gone to the city of the Varnish for an extended period of time and hadn't told anyone that he was going to be away. But when the characters got back to town, he was there at the inn, and so it turns out he was fine after all. And then the other thing, towards the end of the last video, you'll recall that Istan, the traitor who had been secretly helping the goblins, there was a trial there in town that took place at the inn, and I don't have any screenshots from that game session, but it was something that the characters participated in, and they had, the papers proving that Istan had been working with the goblins, and it was a lot of fun. And like I say, unfortunately, I have no screenshots, but this was the preset that I had used on the actual gameplay map, and so I grabbed a screenshot of it so that you could see what that looked like. So anyway, like I say, Istan was found guilty of treason and he was taken away by these people back to the Varnish for sentencing. Alright, so you'll recall at the end of the last video, it was the Rich Fest celebration, like a midsummer festival in the Greyhawk calendar that the characters were participating in. And here's a larger view, and I labeled where each of the player characters are, so you can see them in the crowd. However, I want to specifically focus in there on the bottom right-hand corner, the characters, Thorl and Garrett. They are interacting with a vendor there, Manco the Falconer, and he had for sale various trained birds, the most expensive of which was a trained hunting falcon, which the characters did not have enough money for. However, they did buy a couple of other things. Thorl, the mage, purchased this owl, Athos the owl, and he made that graphic there with the name tag. And then Garrett the thief purchased this crow. So now they had those animals with them. So to recount the various animal NPCs that the characters have at this point, in the last video, there was a couple of screenshots in which Chuck the donkey appeared. They also had with them Felipe the guard dog, and now they also have Athos the owl and Mischief the crow. I had mentioned last time that there were various games that took place over the course of this week long festival that um, not only the characters and the locals participated in, but people came in from from outside the town to participate as well. One of which was this group of NPCs, the leader of which was this person, Sir Havad Quinn, and they ended up being the character's chief antagonist during these uh, games over the course of the week, and there was some animosity there. However, Sir Hava did not win the games, and actually none of the characters did either. It turned out an NPC who was participating won, but regardless, Sir Hava there had uh, ill feelings over losing the games. And to make it worse, the characters actually ended up convincing his followers that he was bad news and that they should just leave him and go their own way. He would only lead them into trouble if they stayed with him, and they succeeded. The other NPCs there all ended up leaving on their own and abandoning Sir Havad, which of course just made him even more angry at the characters. And as I recall, threats were made, and they ended up essentially chasing Sir Havad out of town. And this was the portrait that I used for him during the game. All right, so after the festival concluded, I moved on to this particular official D&D adventure module. This is a pretty extensive module, and I did not use all of it. I only took certain segments out of it that I wanted to use with the campaign. It started by, if you look on the screenshot, there's a person there, Stephen, talking to the innkeeper. Stephen comes from he and his family run a horse farm that is way off in the forest, and Stephen had just negotiated a contract to sell a herd of horses that they had raised, and so he was here in town looking to hire some people to help escort the herd of horses to the buyer. As I said, the horse farm was way off in the wilderness, and so he wanted some extra help to make sure that the horses got to the buyer safely. So he ended up hiring the characters to do this job. And the deal was that in a couple of days, they should go several miles outside of the village. The road crosses a bridge over a river, and Stephen had arranged for a barge to be there to pick up whomever he hired and take them back up the river closer to where the horse farm is. But it wouldn't be able to take them the whole way. They would have to get out and walk the rest of the way to get to the horse farm. Stephen said that he was going on to, he was going to be buying supplies to have sent back to their horse farm. So he left and just like I said, gave the characters the instructions to meet the barge at the river crossing in a couple of days. So at the appointed time, the characters set out, and on their way to the river crossing, they came across this scene. This is obviously the wagon train that had been taking Istan to the Varnish for sentencing. Clearly, a large battle had been fought. You see the dead guards lying about. The wagons are wrecked and broken. You also see dead goblins and wargs lying around. So clearly, the wagon train had been ambushed and with the intention of rescuing Istan. I have actual screenshot from the game campaign. This was just the battle map that I used, so I got a picture of it to show you. The characters found in the wreckage of the prison wagon there, a woman was hiding. She was also being taken to the city for punishment, but and when the goblins attacked, they totally ignored her. They only took Istin, and she told them all these details when the characters found her. She was hiding under the broken wagon there. She was afraid to go anywhere until the characters came along and talked to her. So that's how they learned the specific details of what happened. But they agreed to take her along with them. And of course, now they know that Istan is freed again, and no doubt going to be working more mischief in the future. So the characters continued on and got to the river crossing that I mentioned, and sure enough, the barge was there waiting to take them back up the river. And you can see the characters there on the road, and then also this new NPC that was with them, whose her name is Lena. So the barge brought them to this place, and I have a screenshot from the actual game, but this is a battle map that I used. This road in the forest that crosses the river, and there was a person who ran a ferry here to shuttle people back and forth. And the characters got here, and obviously there had been recent trouble. The person who operated the ferry was nowhere to be found, and the boat itself that the ferry operator used was wrecked and was still smoldering from having been burned. So when the characters got here, it was clear that there was trouble in the area, but there was nothing for them to do but set off on the footpath towards the horse farm, and that's that road there on the left hand side running south. So the next chapter in this adventure, the characters get to the horse farm, and they get there towards evening, and they find that it's under attack by a large force of goblins and wargs. And they have to actually fight their way through the goblin lines to get to the horse farm before it gets completely dark. And unfortunately, I only have a few screenshots from that entire battle. It takes place over the course of the entire night, and the only screenshots that I have are these few that I'll go through, and they occur towards the following morning when dawn's about to break, and the goblins and wargs are making one final push to try to win through before they leave when the daytime comes. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to focus on different areas of these maps here. So this is the Great Hall of the horse farm. There on the left, you see is the kitchen area, and then on the right is the Great Hall. And this is the obviously the ground floor. And then to the upper right, you see a stone tower, and that is, of course, the ground floor of the tower. If you look around, you notice there are no windows on the ground floor. The people who live here had done that on purpose with an eye towards defense. There's heavy doors on the ground floor, of course, so people can get in and out, but no windows. And again, this is one last big push that the goblins were making. You see there on the left a large group of wargs and some goblins. They've gotten inside the walls and are trying to break down the door to get inside. It's not visible in the screenshot, but the people who live here had a stable of their personal horses, and earlier in the battle, the characters had brought those horses into the kitchen area to keep them safe from the goblins. And now, at this point, with the goblins trying to break into the kitchen, You see Duke there. He's opened up the interior doors, and he's here. He's in the process of leading the horses out of the kitchen and into the great hall to try to keep them safe. On the right hand side, you see a group of goblins and a hobgoblin, and they have a ladder there. As I mentioned earlier, there are no windows on this ground level. So, what that ladder is, it's actually going up to the second level where there are some windows. And, just like in a castle siege, they've brought these ladders and are trying to climb up it to get inside the place. Back to the tower there on the upper right. I mentioned earlier that the characters got here towards evening and that the horse farm was already under attack, and the characters had to break through the goblin lines just to get in here. And the mage, Thorol the mage, they're still low level, so he didn't have very many spells anyway, but he had to use what spells he did have just to help the party get inside. And so once they were inside and night was falling, Thorol went into this bottom floor of the cellar here and got out his bedroll and proceeded to go to sleep so that he could then rememorize his spells. In the basic expert rules, a spellcaster has to get at least 8 hours of rest before they can rememorize spells. And so the entire night, while various attacks were taking place on the horse farm, Thorol was in that bottom floor of the tower resting so that he could regain his spells. He's not there now because, like I say, this is towards dawn the next morning, and so he's back up again. But I just wanted to point out that detail. All right, so this shows the second floor of the horse farm. You see bedrooms there on the left. There's in the middle part where the great hall is, you can see there's like a balcony that circles around and opens up to the ground floor. And then the second floor of the tower there on the upper right, you see several of the people who actually live here in that area. And as far as characters go, you see Thorol there standing in front of that window with his owl and looking out, and Garrett is there, and you see Obrak. Remember, there are those goblins on that climbing that ladder, and that's the window that they're coming for, and Obrak is standing there at the window waiting for them to try to repel those invaders. And then up in the tower, you see the fighter Aramis guarding a window, and then that NPC Lena as well. She's helping out. Now, I mentioned about Thorol regaining his spells, and so what he did at that window is he cast a sleep spell and caught all these goblins that were coming across the courtyard. Because as you see by now, the door had been broken in and the wargs all came inside. But the goblins that were coming as well all got a sleep spell cast on them, and so now they're out. So all you have is this pack of wargs who don't really have any. There's one goblin in there, but once they got inside the kitchen, the wargs immediately started going for all the food that was stored in there, and that's what I was depicting here. Meanwhile, you see that Duke had taken a bed and flipped it on its side and shoved it up against the door, and was preparing to defend that place if necessary. And then on the other side of the Great Hall, you see by now Obrak and perhaps some of the other characters had thrown some oil down onto the goblins that were trying to come up that ladder to keep them from getting inside. And here's back up on the second level again. You see further down, some goblins and a hobgoblin did get inside, and Obrak is going down there to fight them, and Aramis is coming up as well. And I imagine that Garrett and Lena there are doing missile fire across the balcony area towards those goblins in the south. And then Thorol there at that window facing north. And then finally on the roof of the tower, there are some more of the NPCs who actually live here. And you see the character Varys the elf, and I'm sure he had a missile weapon, so he was up there on the tower with the others, shooting down on the goblins as well. So essentially, even though Thorol missed the knights fighting, it was his sleep spell that broke up the final attack. The wargs, once they had eaten all the food in the kitchen, there was no goblins left to guide them, and so they all just ran off, and what few goblins were still alive called them off, and so the horse farm survived the overnight siege. So when it was over, the people who live here gifted the characters those horses that Duke had saved, and told them that now they were not going to be able to take their horse herd. Well, actually, the horse herd was gone because the goblins had taken it. So they were going to have to try to get that back. But the horses they did have here, they gave to the characters. So there were a lot of adventures that happened after this that I don't have any screenshots for, and I'm not going to try to recount it. The bottom line is the characters tracked the goblins, got the horse herd, brought it back, and made everything right again as well as they could. However, now the whole mission about escorting the horse herd was off, at least for the time being, and the characters were interested in tracking the goblins and trying to find Istan once again. And so the people who lived here at the horse farm told them that they really wouldn't know where the goblins might have gone. However, many miles away, they had done some trading with some dwarves who were doing a mining operation in the mountains, and they told the characters how to get there, and that maybe the dwarves knew something that would help point the characters in the right direction. So that's what I have next here. I have this screenshot from the exterior of the mine. The scenario they got there were several dwarves mining, and there were a couple of gnomes who were like the foremen or the supervisors that were running the whole operation. And when the characters got here, they said that their mining operation, they had broken through a wall into a much older area of tunnels that obviously had been there for a very long time. And the problem is that soon after that happened, people started disappearing. One of the two known supervisors disappeared, and then a few of the dwarf miners had disappeared over the next few days. And so the deal that they made with the characters was if the characters would go into those ancient tunnels and try to find out whatever is causing these disappearances, and hopefully rescue those who had disappeared, then they would offer to do what they could to help the PCs in their quest. So I don't have a lot of screenshots from when the characters were exploring these ancient tunnels. But I have this compilation that I made a long time ago. One of the areas that they found in these ancient tunnels is this room here, that there are these little silver statues, and of course when the characters came inside, these statues animated and began attacking them. And this is a compilation showing a lot of the critical hits and fumbles that happened during this battle. It was a pretty nasty fight. As is often the case, an encounter that you think will not be a big deal ends up being a very big deal when the characters actually start interacting with it. And if you look at the health bars on some of the characters, you can see they're down pretty low. So yeah, it was a nasty fight. The characters continue on exploring these ancient tunnels, and they eventually get into an area where it's much smaller. And this was I want to say it was like a great ooze that the characters came across. And here you can see Obrak the dwarf ran up to try to fight it and immediately took a critical hit, which reduced his effectiveness for a while. Continuing on, they finally figured out they had to use fire if they wanted to defeat this thing, and so that's what they were doing. But about this time, a new threat emerged. This giant spider approached from deeper in this tunnel and shot some webbing, and you can see that it caught Thorol the mage there. So this screenshot shows Thorol being trapped by some webs from that spider. Continuing on, the characters who were still able to move around closed with the spider and started fighting with it. They threw a torch to create more light and continued to do battle with that thing until finally they were able to defeat the spider and get Thorol free from the webs. And if you look there on the right-hand side in the darkness where the spider's lair, you'll see those cocoon-like things, and those turned out to be the people who are missing from the dwarf mine. None of them were actually dead. They had just been poisoned and then wrapped in these cocoons for the spider to eat later. So the characters were able to free them and take them back to the dwarf mine section, and the characters had been promised a monetary reward, which they collected. And as far as information goes, the dwarves said that they really didn't know where the the goblins might be, because they spend all their time here in the mine. However, they said that there was a band of wood elves off in the forest that they had sometimes traded with for food, and that being wood elves, they would be a lot more aware of what was going on in the forest, and surely they would be able to help their characters track down the goblins that they were after. So the characters set out to go find these wood elves. However, first there was a small village on the edge of the forest. By now they're a long way from where they started. So they stopped at this village to kind of resupply themselves. And it was here that Roy the Halfling rejoined the party. You'll remember he died in the first video, and they had sent him off to Devarnish to be resurrected. And then when they left, I forgot to mention it, when they left town on this series of adventures, they had sent word to Rory where they were going, and that to try to give him an idea of where he could find them. And so, sure enough, he was here at this village, and so they linked back up with him. He rejoined the party, and the characters also took this opportunity um, to have Lena take their horses back to the village of Valerial. They felt, with the adventuring that they were going to be doing, horses might be hard to take care of. So they decided to send her off with their horses and continue on foot from this point. Um, so the characters continued on, and they found this band of wood elves that the dwarves told them about. And as you might expect, the elves did know where these goblins were lairing at. Um, However, they had a little side quest that they asked the characters to complete for them. I don't have any screenshots from it, but the characters use that raft there to cross a lake to get to an island, and did what the wood elves asked them to do. And I used that opportunity to also bring in a new character and a new player. This was a player that I had had in my original Roll20 game. I mentioned it in the first video that it was using first edition, and that game only lasted about a year. And when I started this one, I invited that one player back, but he was not able to join right away. He had real life stuff going on. But at this time, he contacted me and said that he was now ready to rejoin the game if he could. And so I told him, yeah, you can bring one of your characters from the original game, and we'll incorporate him into this game. And so part of the adventure that the wood elves set the party on, I worked it in so that that new character joined the party. And so it's at this point that Gorbadoc the Halfling joins the party. And you just like in the first video with the characters, you can see his stats there. After the characters finished the quest for the wood elves, the player who was running Varys decided that he wanted to have Varys leave the party, because at this point he had three characters. He was running Rory the Halfling, who had just rejoined. He had Varys the Elf, and then he was also running the Cleric Duke. So he was running three characters, which was a little much. So he decided that Varys was going to stay here with these wood elves, and he wanted to spend some time amongst them, recounting what he had learned about all the goblins, that the plots of the goblins, and the story was he just wanted to reconnect with his people. So when the party left the wood elves, Varys stayed behind, and the rest of the characters continued on. So the path following the goblins eventually led to this ruined city deep in the forest. And when the characters got there, amongst these city ruins, they were attacked by these baboon-like creatures who threw rocks, and that it was really a challenge. Those they threw rocks hard, and it hurt. And if you look on the health bars of a lot of the characters, they're down pretty low. And it wasn't just this one group in the screenshot that I have. There were multiple groups of these rock throwing monkeys that the characters had to fight their way through, and it was a challenge. One thing I see now, I forgot to mention, when the characters were at the village a few scenes back, They also hired a man-at-arms, and you can see him down there in the bottom right-hand corner of this view. I don't even remember his name now, but so anyway, he was with the party as well. And then next to him down there, you can see Gorbadoc and Rory and Garrett, and then the rest of the characters further up. And there in the upper left-hand corner, I'm guessing Thor will cast a web spell on some of those rock-throwing apes, and then they set it on fire. So the characters fought through the apes and got to an area of the city where there were goblins. And they fought their way through, and they got into the throne room, if you will, of the Goblin King, who was commanding them all. And you could, of course, you could see all the characters there. And specifically, I recorded this screenshot because the Goblin King was up on this, raised platform on like a throne, and Obrak ran over to fight him. And even though it was a raised platform, they're goblins, so it wasn't very high. And Obrak had a warhammer and could reach, and you can see he rolled a critical hit. And I have these personal fumble and critical charts that the characters can roll on when they score a natural 20, and you can see the results on there. So yeah, Obrak ran up and immediately used his warhammer to face smash the Goblin King, and anyway, the characters quickly defeated this group here. So the next scene I have here, the characters get there in the middle of this ruined city. There was a tower, and they, as you can see there at the bottom of the scene, they took one of the goblins prisoner, and he told them of a secret door at the base of the tower where they could come in through the cellars or whatever, and not have to go through the main entrance, which they had scouted out and was heavily guarded. But this goblin knew of a secret way in that they used, and it was not guarded by goblins or hobgoblins. But what was in that area that the character soon found out were a couple of gelatinous cubes, and that's what's being fought here. And they've got one down, and if you look on that one in the upper left-hand corner, it's kind of semi-transparent, but you can see that Rory has been absorbed by one of the gelatinous cubes, and they end up defeating the other one and rescuing Rory. But it was a challenge. You can see there in the middle, both Duke and Aramis have been paralyzed by that cube, and were not able to participate in the fight from that point. The characters then went and they fought their way up various levels of this tower, and I don't have any screenshots from that, unfortunately. But just suffice it to say that they defeated the various guards on different levels. The goblin had told them that the boss was this wizard who was behind it all, and the top floor of this tower was his lair. And the characters fought their way up to that area, and by the time they got to this evil wizard's lair, he had escaped. Of course, being a wizard, he had ways to get out of there if he ever needed to. So he gets away. However, he didn't have time to take a lot of his things, so the characters got some loot, treasure and magic. And going through the papers on the wizard's desk, they found this particular note. And if you look at it, it says there that basically Istan had been given a force of goblins, and wargs, and they sent him back to the village of Valerial to take it over. So while the characters are running around out here in the forest trying to track Istan down, he had been sent back with an army of goblins to attack the village. And then if you look on that second paragraph, there's a reference there to Verba Bonk, which of course is where the village of Hamlet is located. So there's a little foreshadowing there as well. All right, so I have to stop here a second and explain something. One thing I had been doing, that I'd done for this group is whenever a holiday came. Well, the first one was Halloween, and I did a holiday themed one shot. So you see here, for Halloween, and then later for Christmas, I ran holiday themed one shot for the players, and I had these holiday themed gifts that the players got that they could assign to any other characters. If they had more than one, and depending on the scenario, a player who did the best would get an extra gift. So it was just a fun side thing that I wanted to do. But one of the holiday gifts for Halloween that the characters got was this thing, pumpkin carriage, and basically what it does, it's a one-use magic item, but it will hold up to 8 people, and then you could even tether animals to the outside. And it will instantly, once the user activates it, it will instantly transport everyone to any point that the owning character wants within 100 miles. The only restriction is that it has to be a place that character has previously visited. And so the characters learn from that letter that Istan had gone back to their village with a force of goblins to attack it and take it over. And by this point, the characters are a long way from the village, several dozen miles away. And now they're on foot, they don't even have their horses, so it would take a very long time for them to get back. So they decided that this was a good time to use a holiday item, this pumpkin carriage. So they all climbed inside and activated it, and for the destination they decided on was that they wanted to be transported into the conference room of the village mayor at Valerial. I didn't have it shown in the video, but they had met with him to explain when things, when there was trouble and what they had learned. They had met with the mayor in his conference room and told him about everything. So they had been there. So they used this pumpkin carriage to warp themselves back to the village right into the mayor's conference room. And so when they got there, what they saw, if you look there on the far right-hand side, is the mayor's house, and there's this, bay window in this conference room looking out over the village crossroads, and they could see, sure enough, that goblins had taken over the place, and in fact, they were getting ready to. Well, you can see there, right at the Y in the road, they had Harold the Mage tied to a stake, and we were getting ready to burn him. And they had a scaffolding set up, and the mayor was in a cage there at the top of the screen. And so anyway, the characters got back just in time, and so they picked up a chair from the conference room, threw it through the bay window, and all of them leapt out of the conference room onto this scaffolding there and started attacking. And I grabbed a screenshot during the fighting, and I used this opportunity to label where all the characters were at this particular time, just to make it easier to pick them out in the crowd. And notably, Aramis had run up there to try to keep Harold the Mage from being burned at the stake. You'll see there's a torch there. There on the upper left hand, you see Istan being carried away on a warg with a goblin. Istan had the torch and was just about to set the fire to burn Harold the Mage at the stake, but when the characters came bursting through, he dropped the torch, and this goblin was carrying him away to safety. And then you see the all the other characters are involved in various fights to defeat these creatures. And you see Gorb the halfling there on the chopping block, and I'm sure he was doing missile fire from there, and everyone else was engaged in melee. And then some of the NPCs, well, like the sheriff, you can see him down there near Duke. Once the characters came here, the sheriff was cut free and grabbed a weapon and started helping the characters fight the monsters. So yeah, so there's this screenshot. I have another screenshot here, a little further in the battle. You see down there, Thorol is fighting a warg. You see the sheriff had released Korik, the innkeeper. He was hanging in one of those cages there. If you go back, you'll see that in the other screenshot. Yeah, and so the other characters have all gathered up there around Harold the Mage to cut him free and get him out of there. And Garrett had gone back in the conference hall. Probably he had taken too much damage. Thieves don't have a lot of hit points, and so he probably went back in there to do missile fire. So anyway, I have this screenshot. And now this one, most of the characters had moved out of this area, but you see Obrecht down there in the lower left-hand corner. Thorol had gone up and put himself in one of those cages, and I'm sure he did that because he was getting low on hit points, and so by being inside a cage, any wargs running around would not be able to attack him, but he could still cast spells from outside of the cage. And so I'm sure that's what's going on there. The other characters are run off to try and chase down Istan. And in fact, that's what you see here. They had caught up with Istan, and I can't remember how it happened, but you can see Istan is there on fire. And my memory is that Aramis had a spear, and he had actually pinned Istan to the ground with his spear. And you see some of the other village NPCs have come up to help. You see Wilbur there. If you'll remember, Wilbur was that man-at-arms that they had rescued in the first episode. And, he was part of the group that took Rory to the city to be resurrected. And after that was done, Wilbur came back to the village. And so he's there helping as well. And then you see Gorb there on the left-hand side. Another screenshot. You can see further out there on the upper left-hand corner, Duke and Rory had chased down another goblin, and their dog, whom, if you'll remember, they had left behind here at the village. Or actually, I think I didn't mention that. When they first set out for the horse farm, they did not take the donkey or the dog. They had left them behind in the village. But so there's Felipe back again, reunited with the characters and helping defeat the goblins. And Istan is Istan is defeated and captured. They put out the fire. They didn't let him burn. They took him alive so he could finally be held accountable for his crimes. And this is the last screenshot I have. This is after all the goblins had been defeated or chased off, and see pretty much the whole village is turned out, and I've labeled all the player characters. Also Wilbur, who I mentioned a moment ago, and then Quan there in the upper right-hand corner. Quan was the wagon driver that they had rescued in the last episode, and he was here as well. And then, yeah, all the characters. If you look there in the bottom center, you'll see Gorb standing on a cage. Istan, you'll see his name tag is in that cage. They put him in one of those cages and hoisted him up, and were carrying him back to the sheriff's office to once again put him back in prison so that he can be held accountable for his crimes. And as they were carrying it down the street, Gorb climbed up on top and was riding and taunting Istan through the bars of the cage, I'm sure. Um, so, yeah, that was the end of this whole pre adventure arc. So that's all I have for this one. Next episode is when we will finally get into the real campaign, starting with the village of Hamlet. You can see on this map on the far left hand side is Valerial, and then on the right hand side, just underneath the that module cover illustration, is the village of Hamlet. So the characters have quite a trip ahead of them. I seem to recall at the time I measured it, it was something like 250 miles. So, yeah, so they got a long trip ahead of them to get to Hamlet. But, so that's what we'll start covering in the next episode. All right, so thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And if you found this entertaining, please consider subscribing so that way you'll be notified as soon as any new episodes are uploaded. Thanks again for watching.